There is a terrible secret lying just beneath this civilization. It hides in the light above your head, in the current flowing into your phone, in the seemingly harmless comforts of modern life. We once wished for the power of God's hand. That wish was granted. With a single word, atom. When you hear that word, your mind doesn't think of progress. It immediately paints a picture of a mushroom cloud, a city erased in seconds, a silent human shadow, permanently scorched onto stone steps. That is the primordial terror, a monster born in a laboratory, a curse we unleashed upon ourselves. But here is the truly frightening part. That monster never went away. It is still right here, in every moment you are living. Because the same atom that destroyed Hiroshima is also lighting the room you sit in, saving cancer patients, and guiding spaceships beyond our solar system. It is both a doomsday weapon and a healing tool. It is the greatest double-edged sword humanity has ever held. One side is destruction, the other is salvation. And that is the paradox of our age. We are building a new world on the foundation of the very thing that has the power to incinerate it. So what is the true face of the atom? What is its nature beneath the mask of fear and hope? This journey will not be just a story about science. This is a story about us and about the choices we have made when faced with ultimate power. And to begin, let's look at where the atom reveals its gentlest face. Light from darkness, nuclear power. Light from darkness, nuclear power. Humans, from the depths of our instincts, have always feared the dark. The dark is where beasts lurk, where the unknown resides, a place of primal loneliness. Tens of thousands of years ago, our ancestors gathered around fires, not just for warmth or to cook food, but to drive away the night. That flickering flame was the first civilization. It drew the first safe boundaries between humanity and the wild world. That fire, it's no exaggeration to say, was the first god we worshipped. As time went on, we were no longer satisfied with small fires. We wanted more. We wanted to light up the entire night. We dug deep into the earth, finding forests turned to stone over millions of years coal. We drilled down into ancient oceans, siphoning the black blood of the earth oil. And we burned them. We burned them ravenously, intoxicatingly. The light from coal and oil ignited industrial revolutions, built skyscrapers, and connected continents. We had electricity. We had light with the flick of a switch. We had become gods ruling over the night. But our hunger for energy was insatiable, and the price for burning our planet's past became increasingly clear. The sky was no longer blue. The air grew heavy. The planet began to warm. The god we once worshipped, fire, now threatened to burn down our own home. In the mid-20th century, humanity stood at a crossroads. We needed a new fire. A fire without smoke, without ash. A fire that was clean, powerful, and nearly limitless. And then we found it. In the most unexpected place, inside the tiny heart of matter, inside the atom. On June 26, 1954, in a small, secret, enclosed town named Obnesk, about 100 kilometers southwest of Moscow, an event took place, quietly, but it shook the world. The world's first nuclear power plant, AM-1, with a tiny capacity of just 5 megawatts, was officially connected to the Soviet power grid. Imagine that. Less than a decade after the world witnessed in horror the destructive power of the atomic bombs at Hiroshima and Nagasaki, people had achieved the seemingly impossible. They had tamed the monster. They had captured Zeus's lightning not to destroy but to boil a pot of water. It wasn't just a technical achievement. It was a psychological revolution. For the first time in history, humans could touch and control the very energy that runs the universe. The energy that binds matter, the energy that makes stars burn. From now on, our fire would not come from wood or coal, but from the decay of reality itself. Soviet newspapers at the time ran a proud headline: "The atom for peaceful purposes." The knife once used for murder was now placed in the hands of the chef. But how? How could one start a fire from a cold piece of metal? The answer lies in a magical and violent dance at the subatomic level: nuclear fission. Imagine you have a marble of uranium-235, a special isotope of uranium, like a preset time bomb. Most atoms in nature are quite stable, but uranium-235 is different. It is heavy, cumbersome, and always in a state of unease. You just need a gentle nudge, a stray neutron, to hit it. Boom. The uranium-235 nucleus splits in two, releasing a colossal amount of energy, but that's not all. Along with the energy, it shoots out 2 to 3 new neutrons. These 3 neutrons then fly off, striking 3 other nearby uranium-235 nuclei. These 3 nuclei split, each releasing another 3 neutrons. Now we have 9 neutrons. Then 2781, 243, an exponential chain reaction explodes, releasing energy at an unimaginable speed. In an atomic bomb, this reaction is allowed to run wild, creating a hell on Earth in an instant. But in a nuclear power plant, engineers did something ingenious. They controlled it. They placed uranium fuel rods into a giant pot called a reactor. Between the fuel rods, they insert control rods, usually made of cadmium or boron. These rods have a special ability. They eat neutrons. They're like sponges that soak up excess neutrons. By pushing the control rods deeper in or pulling them out, one can precisely regulate the speed of the chain reaction. They keep the atomic fire simmering just enough to boil water, create steam, turn a turbine, and generate electricity. Basically, a multi-billion-dollar nuclear power plant is the world's most sophisticated and dangerous electric kettle. The difference in energy scale is astonishing. A single uranium fuel pellet, the size of your pinky fingertip, contains energy equivalent to nearly a ton of coal, 480 cubic meters of natural gas, or 3 barrels of oil. Think about that. To light a city for a year, you need endless trains of coal, black and dusty. Or you just need a few dozen tons of uranium. Which would you rather carry home? It is thanks to this energy density that the bright side of the atom begins to appear. This is a source of energy that produces almost no greenhouse gas emissions. While coal and gas power plants spew millions of tons of CO into the atmosphere each year, contributing to climate change, nuclear power plants emit water vapor. That giant column of white smoke you often see rising from the cooling towers of a nuclear plant is pure water vapor. In a world desperately trying to wean itself off fossil fuels, nuclear energy is like a cool glass of water in a desert. It is one of the few energy sources capable of providing stable 24/7 power, independent of sun or wind. Something solar panels or wind turbines cannot do. It provides what is called baseload power, the backbone of any modern electrical grid, ensuring that hospitals, factories, and your home always have electricity. But we all know there is no such thing as a free lunch. What is the price of that cool glass of water? We cannot talk about the light of the atom without confronting its shadow. That shadow has specific names: Chernobyl and Fukushima. On April 26, 1986, at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in Ukraine, a fateful safety test went catastrophically wrong. A deadly combination of a flawed Soviet reactor design and complacent human error led to a horrific steam explosion that blew the 2,000-ton lid off the reactor. The core of reactor number 4 was exposed to the open air. The atomic fire was no longer controlled. It burned for 10 days and nights, spewing into the atmosphere an amount of radiation 400 times greater than the Hiroshima bomb. The wind carried that invisible, deadly radioactive cloud across Europe. Pripyat, a model Soviet city, was permanently evacuated, becoming a ghost town, a chilling reminder of the price of arrogance. Chernobyl was a human tragedy. It showed that the weakest link in any nuclear system, no matter how complex, is always the human being. 25 years later, on March 11th, 2011, the darkness returned. This time, it was not caused by man, but by the wrath of the planet itself. A 9.0 magnitude earthquake, the strongest in Japan's history, shook the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. The automatic safety systems worked perfectly. Reactors shut down immediately. But the disaster had only just begun. Nearly an hour later, a colossal wall of water, a 15-meter-high tsunami, breached the plant's protective seawall. This breached seawater flooded all the backup diesel generators, which were located in the basement. Without power, the cooling systems for the shutdown reactors failed, but the reactor cores were still incredibly hot. The temperature rose, and the nuclear fuel began to melt, breaching the protective containment layers. 3 of the 6 reactors suffered a meltdown. Subsequent hydrogen explosions destroyed the reactor buildings, releasing a large amount of radiation into the environment. Fukushima was a natural tragedy, posed a terrifying question. Can we build something truly safe? Something that can withstand the worst-case scenarios the Earth can throw at us? And then there is another problem, a legacy that lasts for thousands of years. Nuclear waste. Spent fuel rods remain extremely radioactive and dangerous for tens, even hundreds of thousands of years. What do we do with them? Currently, the most common solution is to store them in on-site cooling pools or in dry steel-reinforced concrete casks. But this is only a temporary solution. The proposed long-term solution is to bury them hundreds of meters deep underground in stable geological formations. Finland is pioneering this with the Onkalo Repository, a complex tunnel system designed to last for 100,000 years. Think about that time span. 100,000 years ago, humans had not yet painted the first cave paintings. We are leaving a toxic legacy for future civilizations that may not even understand our language or read the warning signs we leave behind. So there it is, the double-edged sword, clearer than ever. On one side, a clean, abundant, and stable energy source capable of saving us from climate catastrophe. On the other, the risk of horrific accidents and a legacy of toxic waste that lasts almost forever. Let's return to a more everyday story. Imagine a stormy night. The wind howls, trees sway, and then pop. The whole neighborhood is plunged into darkness. Power outage. Outside, an ambulance siren wails. In a nearby hospital, ventilators beep and then fall silent. Heart monitors go flat. In just a few seconds, chaos ensues. But then, with a thump, the backup generator kicks in. The emergency lights switch back on. Doctors and nurses breathe a sigh of relief and continue their life-saving work. We usually only think about electricity when we lose it. But the stability of the power grid, its ability to withstand storms, comes largely from large, continuously operating power plants like thermal and nuclear plants. If your loved one were in that emergency room and you knew that the stable grid, which prevents the hospital from relying solely on backup generators, was partially supplied by a nuclear power plant, what would you think of the word nuclear then? It's no longer an abstract concept, a monster somewhere far away. It is the light of life on a stormy night. Nuclear energy is not a simple answer. It is a trade-off, a high-stakes gamble. We bet against absolute safety in exchange for a lower carbon future. We bet our peace of mind in exchange for the stability of our civilization. This is a question for you, a question with no right or wrong answer. Where there were a referendum on building a new, safer generation nuclear power plant about 100 kilometers from where you live, would you vote for or against it? Would you choose the tangible fear of a potential disaster or the invisible but ever-present fear of climate change? That choice says a lot about how we view risk, hope, and our own future. Share your thoughts in the comments below. The healing atom, nuclear medicine. There is a paradox at the heart of modern medicine, a terrifying yet hopeful truth. It begins with a seemingly absurd question. Can the thing that once killed hundreds of thousands become a doctor? Think about it. The words radiation or radioactivity creep into our minds with the darkest of images. We see the burned skin of Hiroshima's victims, the children of Chernobyl with thyroid cancer, the poisoned lands uninhabitable for centuries. Radiation is the invisible enemy, the silent killer. When a patient first hears the doctor say the word radiotherapy, that fear resurfaces. They're not just afraid of the disease within them, they're also afraid of the treatment itself. They fear that to kill the monster inside, they must ingest another monster. And that fear is entirely justified. But it's only half the story, because in the fight against one of humanity's most formidable foes, cancer, that very monster has become the most sophisticated and effective weapon we have. We have turned the destroyer into a healer. The war on cancer is a war at the cellular level, a brutal civil war taking place within our own bodies. Cancer is when a group of cells rebels. They forget the rules. They multiply uncontrollably, invading healthy tissues, and ultimately destroying the very body they inhabit. For centuries, our weapons were crude. First came surgery. If there was a tumor, we would cut it out. Like leveling an entire village to eliminate a group of rebels. It was effective, but it left deep scars and damage. Then, in the mid-20th century, we got chemotherapy, using powerful chemicals to kill rapidly dividing cells. This was like carpet bombing. It killed not only cancer cells, but also other rapidly dividing healthy cells in the body, like hair follicle cells, intestinal lining cells, and blood cells. That's why chemotherapy causes such terrible side effects: hair loss, nausea, fatigue. It was an effective weapon, but the price was incredibly high. And then, nuclear medicine brought a completely new strategy: precision strikes. Instead of leveling the village or bombing an entire region, we now have snipers and smart bombs. The first and most common weapon in this arsenal is external beam radiotherapy. Imagine a giant linear accelerator, a machine that looks like it's straight out of a science fiction movie. The patient lies still, sometimes secured with custom-made masks, to ensure millimeter-perfect accuracy. Then, the machine begins to move around them silently, emitting an invisible high-energy beam, usually X-rays or gamma rays. This beam is precisely focused on the tumor. Its target is DNA. DNA is the blueprint of life, the command thread for all cellular activity. This high-energy beam is like millions of microscopic bullets, shredding the DNA structure of the cells it passes through. Healthy cells have very effective DNA repair mechanisms, so they are able to recover from the damage. But cancer cells are different. Because they divide so quickly and chaotically, their repair mechanisms are often faulty. When their DNA is too heavily damaged, the cancer cells cannot repair themselves and will die. Radiotherapy exploits this very fatal weakness. It is a sniper, patiently aiming at the enemy's weak point, firing round after round, day after day, until the tumor's fortress collapses. Millions upon millions of lives have been saved by this invisible bullet of light. Sometimes to destroy the enemy, a distant sniper is not enough. You need to get the weapon right into their stronghold. That's when we have brachytherapy and systemic radioisotope therapy. Instead of shooting beams from the outside, doctors insert tiny radioactive seeds, the size of a grain of rice, directly into or next to the tumor. These seeds silently release radiation over a period of time, attacking the tumor from the inside with a high, concentrated dose, minimizing damage to surrounding healthy tissue. It's like planting a time bomb right inside the enemy's base. Another classic example is the use of iodine-131 to treat thyroid cancer. The thyroid gland is the only organ in the body capable of absorbing iodine. Scientists took advantage of this. They created a radioactive form of iodine, iodine-131. The patient simply swallows a pill or a solution containing this substance. The iodine-131 travels through the bloodstream all over the body, but it is selectively captured by the thyroid. There, it emits radiation, destroying thyroid cancer cells with extreme efficiency, no matter where they have metastasized in the body. This is a true magic bullet, a smart bomb that seeks out its own target. But perhaps the most miraculous power of nuclear medicine lies not just in destroying, but in seeing. To win a war, you must know where your enemy is. And cancer is a master of camouflage. In its early stages, it can grow silently, without causing any symptoms. invisible to conventional imaging methods like X-rays or ultrasound. It's like a forest fire when it's just a tiny spark. Nuclear medicine gives us the ability to see that spark. The main tools for this are the PET scan and SPECT scan. Their principle is incredibly clever. Imagine you want to track a group of criminals in a crowded city. What would you do? You'd attach a GPS tracker to their car? In a PET scan, scientists do the same thing. They take a molecule the body commonly uses, most often glucose, and attach a short-lived radioactive isotope to it, usually fluorinidine. This compound is called FDG, cancer cells. Because they are constantly active and multiplying, are extremely hungry for energy. They consume glucose tens of times more than normal cells. When FDG is injected into the patient's body, it travels everywhere but concentrates in high densities where cancer cells are present. The fluorinidine isotope will decay and emit a particle called a positron. When this positron collides with an electron in the body, they annihilate each other in a flash of energy, creating two gamma rays that fly off in opposite directions. The circular PET scanner surrounding the patient is designed to detect these exact pairs of gamma rays. By analyzing millions of such events, a computer can reconstruct a 3D map of the body, on which the areas with cancer cells will glow brightly like cities at night. The PET scan allows doctors to see the disease when it is still invisible, can detect tumors just a few millimeters in size, determine if the cancer has spread, and evaluate whether a treatment is effective by seeing if the tumors glow less brightly. It has completely changed how we diagnose and monitor cancer. Try to put yourself in a patient's journey. All begins with a vague fear. Then the doctor's diagnosis lands like a death sentence. The feeling of the ground crumbling beneath you. But then, a glimmer of hope. You are taken to the PET scan room. They inject a colorless, odorless solution into your vein and tell you it will make your disease glow. You lie inside a large, quiet machine with only a gentle humming sound. And then on the doctor's screen, the enemy appears. It is no longer an undefined fear. It has a shape, a location, a size. For the first time, you and your doctor can look the enemy straight in the face. Then come the weeks of radiotherapy. You lie on the cold table, alone in a large room with a giant machine hovering around you. At first, there is fear. Gradually, you realize that machine is not the enemy. It is an ally. It is your weapon. You are no longer a passive victim. You are a warrior. Fear slowly gives way to hope. And then one day after finishing the treatment, you have another PET scan. The doctor shows you the results. The spots that once glowed brightly on the film are now faded or have disappeared completely. In that moment, the atom is no longer a monster. It is a miracle. And that miracle doesn't stop at cancer. Every day, millions of medical instruments, from syringes and surgical gloves to artificial heart valves, are sterilized using gamma rays. This method is more effective than heat or chemicals and can kill all microorganisms without damaging the materials. Every safe surgery, every sterile injection, has a silent contribution from nuclear energy. So, let's return to the original question. The thing that once killed hundreds of thousands become a doctor? The answer is no. The atom itself cannot become anything. It is just a source of energy, inanimate, unfeeling, obeying the laws of physics. It has no good or bad intentions. Like a river, it can bring fertile silt to the plains, but it can also cause devastating floods. It is humans, with our intelligence, curiosity, and above all, compassion, who have learned to control the flow of atomic energy. We have turned its DNA-destroying power into a tool that can selectively kill cancer cells. We have turned its radioactive emissions into a beacon that helps us see the deepest secrets of the body. The atom did not learn to heal. We learned to use it to heal. In the grand story of the atom, the chapter on nuclear medicine is perhaps the most humane and hopeful. It reminds us that even in the most terrifying things, we can find the potential for salvation. It is a testament to the human ability to turn a curse into a blessing. If you or a loved one have ever been helped by the atomic doctor, have ever seen hope from a PET scan or a course of radiotherapy, please share your story. Because in a world still haunted by the mushroom cloud, stories of hope need to be spread more than ever. The atom on the dinner table, agriculture and food. Let's take a short trip together to a very familiar place, your local supermarket. Let's walk down the aisles. What do you see? Plump red strawberries, even though it's the middle of winter. Golden mangoes from a distant tropical country without a single bruise. Aromatic spice packets from the other side of the globe. Everything is fresh, perfect, and always available. We have become so accustomed to this abundance that we take it for granted. But have you ever stopped and wondered, how is this possible? How does the global food supply chain, a massive and complex network, operate so smoothly to bring us such safe and diverse meals? The answer has many parts, but there is one invisible factor, a silent hero that few know about, and many even fear to name. That is the atom. Ever since humans began farming, we have faced timeless enemies. Bacteria, mold, insects, and the ravages of time itself. The Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations estimates that about 1/3 of all food produced for human consumption globally is lost or wasted each year. Wow. That is a colossal figure. We fight this waste in many ways: refrigeration, canning, drying. But there is one extremely effective method that remains a mystery to many: food irradiation. I know what you're thinking. Hearing irradiation and food in the same sentence immediately conjures up frightening images. We imagine meat glowing in the dark, vegetables contaminated with poison. This fear stems from a harmful confusion between being irradiated and being radioactive. These are two completely different concepts. Standing in front of a lamp does not turn you into a lamp. Getting an X-ray does not turn you into an X-ray machine. And irradiating food does not make it radioactive. Imagine the process as a purification by light. Food is placed on a conveyor belt and passes through a heavily shielded room. There it is exposed for a short period to a tightly controlled energy source. This source can be gamma rays or high-energy electron beams and X-rays. These energy beams pass through the food, carrying enough power to break the DNA structure of any microorganisms within. Salmonella bacteria in chicken, E. coli in sprouts, mold on bread, or insect eggs in grains. They killed these pathogens without using high heat or toxic chemicals. The food that comes out of the irradiation chamber is still fresh, but it has been cleaned at a microscopic level. It's like a dose of light-based antibiotics, a bladeless surgery to remove invisible pathogens. The benefits of this method are enormous. First and foremost is food safety. Every year, millions of people worldwide suffer from food poisoning, with some cases even resulting in death. Irradiation is one of the most effective ways to kill common pathogens, protecting consumer health. It is especially important for people with weakened immune systems, like cancer patients or the elderly. NASA has used irradiated food for its astronauts for decades, because in space, a case of food poisoning could be a catastrophe. Second is extending shelf life, which helps combat waste. A normal strawberry can get moldy after just a few days in the fridge, but an irradiated strawberry can stay fresh for several weeks. Irradiated potatoes and onions will not sprout. Meat and seafood can be preserved longer. This not only helps families save money, but on a larger scale, it helps reduce the amount of food thrown away, a pressing global issue. Third, it is a crucial tool in international trade. When you want to export a container of mangoes from Vietnam to the US or Europe, one of the biggest hurdles is phytosanitary inspection. Importing countries have extremely strict regulations to prevent the introduction of harmful pests, like fruit flies. Previously, fumigation chemicals like methyl bromide were commonly used, but this chemical harms the ozone layer. Irradiation has emerged as a safe and effective alternative. A dose of radiation can kill or sterilize all insect eggs and larvae without leaving any chemical residue on the mango. Thanks to this nuclear passport, a nation's products can travel the world. But the atom's role on our dinner table doesn't stop at preservation. It also participates in creating the very foods we eat through a technique called radiation-induced mutation breeding. Before you worry, remember this. Mutation is a completely natural process. It is the engine of evolution. All life on Earth, from bacteria to humans, is the product of billions of years of mutation and natural selection.
Right.
For thousands of years, farmers practiced this unconsciously. They always chose to save seeds from the healthiest, most productive, or best-tasting plants. They were selecting for beneficial mutations naturally. But this process is very slow, depends on the luck of nature. Mutation breeding is a way to fast-forward that evolutionary process. Scientists take seeds or cuttings of a crop and expose them to a controlled dose of radiation. This radiation causes thousands of random mutations in their genome. It's like taking a book and shaking it hard to let the letters rearrange themselves. Most of the new sentences created will be meaningless or erroneous. Similarly, most of the plants that grow from these seeds will be weak, deformed, or unremarkable. But among those tens of thousands of individuals, there may be a few rare mutations that confer a valuable trait. Perhaps a rice plant suddenly has resistance to a certain fungal disease. Maybe a barley plant is more tolerant to drought. Or a mint plant produces more essential oil. The job of scientists and breeders is then to screen for and find these gems, then continue to breed and crossbreed them for years to stabilize the desired trait. It is a process that requires patience and meticulousness, but its results have been and are feeding the world. According to the database of the FAO and the International Atomic Energy Agency, more than 3,300 new crop varieties have been created using this method and are officially grown in over 70 countries. We have rice varieties in Asia with higher yields and better disease resistance, helping to ensure food security. We have barley varieties in Europe that can be grown in arid regions. We have the Rio Star grapefruit in Texas with a deeper red color, sweeter taste, and fewer seeds, a direct product of nuclear irradiation. It is important to emphasize, this is not genetic modification technology. It does not introduce genes from one species to another. It simply accelerates the natural mutation process of the plant itself. So why, with such enormous and proven benefits, do many of us still feel apprehensive? That fear comes from the word atomic. It is a word stained by tragic historical events, but in agriculture and food, it is not a weapon, it is a tool. A tool that helps us have safer meals, waste less, and develop more resilient crops to face a changing world. The metaphor in the original script was spot on. The nucleus sows the seeds for both fear and the harvest. Sows fear through misunderstanding and false associations. But it also sows bountiful harvests, safe meals, and solutions to humanity's pressing problems. The next time you're in the supermarket, look at the food around you with a different eye. That perfect strawberry might be telling the story of an energy beam that protected it from mold. That fragrant packet of pepper might be telling the story of a safe journey across continents thanks to sterilization by irradiation. The fluffy white rice you eat every day might have descended from an X-Men seed, awakened by a gamma ray in a lab, to carry within it the ability to fight off pests. The atom is silently present on our very dinner tables. It doesn't glow, it isn't toxic, it isn't dangerous. It is simply a testament to how human ingenuity can turn the most feared energy source into a tool that nurtures life. The question for you is, does this knowledge change how you view your food? Would you be willing to accept a product labeled treated by irradiation if you knew it was safer and fresher for longer? The debate between feeling and fact, between ingrained fear and scientific evidence, is one that plays out in all of our minds. Industry and space exploration. Take a moment to look out the window or picture in your mind the world we have built. Skyscrapers of steel and glass reach up, defying gravity. Giant bridges span wide rivers, connecting lands. An airplane glides effortlessly across the sky, carrying hundreds of lives across oceans. Beneath your feet, a complex network of pipelines transports gas, clean water, and energy to every home. Our industrial civilization is a magnificent creation, a complex symphony of engineering and materials. But it is also incredibly fragile. Its safety depends on things the naked eye cannot see. The integrity of a weld, the uniformity of a block of concrete, the absence of a microscopic crack. So what is guarding this invisible safety? Who checks the health of these steel giants to which we entrust our lives every day? The answer, once again, lies with the atom. It is the silent inspector, the meticulous doctor of the industrial world. This quiet work has a very technical name: non-destructive testing. As the name suggests, these are methods of inspecting materials without having to cut, break, or damage them. And one of the most powerful tools in NDT is industrial radiography. In essence, it's like taking an X-ray of a patient, but the patient hears an oil pipeline, an aircraft wing, or a ship's hull weld. Instead of using a hospital X-ray machine, engineers use much more powerful and compact radiation sources, usually isotopes like iridium-192 or cobalt-60, housed in safe shielded devices. They place the radiation source on one side of the object to be inspected, and a film or a digital detector on the other. The invisible gamma rays pass through the solid metal. If the material inside is uniform and flawless, the film will have an even gray color. But if there is a crack, an air pocket, or a corroded area, those spots will have lower material density. More gamma rays will pass through and hit the film, leaving a darker mark. It allows engineers to see deadly defects hidden deep within steel structures, things that all surface inspection methods would miss. Think about this the next time you board an airplane. Your peace of mind comes not just from the flight attendant's smile or the pilot's experience. It also comes from the invisible assurance that, before assembly, every critical weld, every blade of the jet engine, has been scanned by these atomic eyes. The bridge you drive over every day, the building you work in, they stand strong, not just because of cement and steel, but because of the rigorous inspection by a technology born from the heart of stars. The atom not only helps us protect what we've built, it also helps us find resources hidden deep within the earth. In the mining and oil and gas industries, geologists use a technique called well logging. They lower probes containing a neutron or gamma source down boreholes that are kilometers deep. As these rays interact with the surrounding rock layers, they reflect or emit characteristic signals. By analyzing these signals, geologists can create a detailed map of what's down there, where the porous sandstone that might hold oil is, where the dense shale is, and where the groundwater reserves are. It's like an ultrasound for the Earth, an atomic dowsing rod that helps us find the planet's treasures. Atoms are also silent environmentalists. Scientists can use natural radioactive isotopes like tritium to trace the flow of underground water systems, learn where pollution from a factory is spreading, or measure the rate of soil erosion. They are releasing glowing spies into the Earth's circulatory system to listen to its secrets. These applications are incredibly important, but they are still tied to the ground. There is another field where the atom plays not just a supporting role, but is a prerequisite for existence. That is when we leave our home, Earth, and begin our journey into the endless night of the cosmos. Space is an unimaginably harsh environment. It is cold, dark, and empty. Near Earth, solar power is an excellent option. But as you travel farther, to the orbits of Jupiter, Saturn, and beyond, the sunlight becomes too faint, no more than a bright star. Giant solar panels become useless. To power our robotic explorers on decades-long journeys into deep space, we need something else. A power source that is compact, durable, and can operate for decades without maintenance. We need an atomic heart. That power source is called a radioisotope thermoelectric generator. The name sounds complicated, but its principle is elegantly simple. First and foremost, an RTG is not a nuclear reactor. There is no chain reaction occurring inside it. It cannot explode like a bomb or melt down like Chernobyl. An RTG works on a very basic physical phenomenon. Natural radioactive decay always generates heat. Engineers take a very special radioactive isotope, usually plutonium-238, and press it into hard ceramic pellets. Plutonium-238 has a half-life of about 87.7 years, meaning it will decay slowly and steadily, giving off a significant amount of heat for a very long time. These plutonium pellets, encased in multiple layers of protective material, will naturally heat up to hundreds of degrees Celsius, glowing a reddish-orange like an ember that never fades. Then, they surround this atomic ember with thermocouples. These are special devices that can directly convert a temperature difference into an electric current. No turbines, no moving parts. Just the heat from the silent decay of atoms being turned into electricity. It is this simplicity that makes the RTG the most reliable power source ever built by humans. And thanks to these durable atomic hearts, we have written the most glorious chapters in the history of space exploration. In 1977, two twin spacecraft, Voyager 1 and Voyager 2, left Earth. Their mission was to undertake a great grand tour, taking advantage of a rare planetary alignment to visit Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. They sent back the first ever close-up images of those distant worlds. Today, after nearly 50 years of travel, they have journeyed farther than any man-made object in history, have crossed the boundary of our solar system, and are now flying through interstellar space. Their cameras, and most of their scientific instruments, have been turned off to save power. But their plutonium hearts are still beating, providing enough power for their communication equipment to send back faint beeps, whispers from the void, reporting that they are still there. They are humanity's loneliest messengers, carrying the golden record with the sounds and images of Earth, powered by a tiny man-made sun. Or let's go to Mars. The surface of the red planet is a harsh place. At night, temperatures can drop below -100 degrees Celsius. Giant dust storms can last for weeks, completely blocking out the sun. Rovers like Curiosity and Perseverance cannot rely on solar power alone to survive. Each is equipped with an RTG. This atomic heart not only provides electricity for them to move, drill rocks, and analyze samples, but also radiates the necessary heat to warm their sensitive electronics, keeping them from freezing during the long, cold Martian night. NASA basically gave its robots a nuclear-powered hand warmer to survive. The line from the original script rings true. Part of atomic energy is whispering. From Mars, the New Horizons mission to Pluto in 2015 would have been impossible without an RTG at a distance of nearly 6 billion kilometers. The sun is just a bright dot, unable to provide enough energy. It was thanks to its plutonium heart that New Horizons was able to fly by and send back the first spectacular images of the icy world at the edge of our solar system. From ensuring the safety of a bridge on Earth to providing life to a robotic explorer on another world, the atom has shown an incredible range of applications. It is both the invisible guardian of our infrastructure and the undying torch for our greatest adventures. And here is a final detail for us to ponder. The isotope plutonium-239 is one of the key materials for making nuclear weapons, a symbol of destruction. But its cousin, plutonium-238, used in RTGs, is the key to peaceful exploration. The same element, with just a few different neutrons, under human guidance, serve two completely opposite purposes. One to end worlds, the other to learn about other worlds. This once again affirms our central theme. The atom is neither good nor bad. Humans decide its purpose. The next time you look up at the starry night sky, remember that out there, in the silent darkness between the stars, we have messengers flying, lit by tiny artificial suns of our own making. Is that great ambition to explore the universe worth the risks we face on Earth in creating and handling these nuclear materials? Absolutely. Here is part 5 of the Atomic Life script, taking us from the grand scale back to our own homes and daily lives, where the atom is present in the most surprising and familiar ways. The atom in everyday life. The useful ghosts. We have journeyed to massive nuclear power plants, the energy hearts of nations. We have stepped into futuristic hospitals where the atom is an ally in the fight for life. We have flown into deep space with ships warmed by plutonium hearts. Now, let's take another trip. No need to go far. Sit still in your room. Just look up at the ceiling. Look at the objects around you. We have spoken of the atom as a grand force, a monster or a god somewhere far away. But what if I told you that, very likely right now, you are living with a nuclear device, that an atomic ghost silently exists in your own home, a quiet guardian you may have never known. Let's begin at a very familiar time. 3 a.m., the house is submerged in silence. You are sound asleep. The greatest danger at this moment is not a burglar, but something far more terrifying. A smoldering fire starting from a shorted out electrical socket. It makes no sound. There is only smoke. Smoke seeps through the cracks under doors, spreading silently. And in that life or death moment, the only thing standing between you and tragedy might be a small plastic device attached to the ceiling. It is a smoke detector. And inside many of the most common types of smoke detectors, the ionization smoke detectors is its heart. A tiny, shiny piece of metal containing about 0.29 micrograms of americium 241. Americium 241 is an artificial radioactive element, a byproduct of nuclear reactors. This tiny piece of americium constantly emits alpha particles. These are fairly large, positively charged particles, but they are very weak. So weak that a sheet of paper or a few centimeters of air can stop them. They are completely harmless to you as long as they are inside the device's plastic casing. Inside the smoke detector is an ionization chamber, a small space with 2 metal plates left open to the air. The alpha particles emitted by the americium 241 fly through this chamber. Along the way, they collide with air molecules, knocking electrons off them and turning them into positively charged ions. This process creates a tiny but steady electric current that flows continuously between the 2 plates. The smoke detector's electronic circuit constantly monitors this current. It's like a sentry, listening for a steady, familiar sound. As long as the current is stable, the sentry remains silent. But when there is a fire, tiny smoke particles enter the ionization chamber. These smoke particles attach to the ions, neutralizing their charge and disrupting the electric current. The current suddenly drops. Instantly, the sentry detects the anomaly. The familiar silence has been broken, and it lets out a piercing, deafening alarm loud enough to wake the soundest sleeper. Think about the elegance of this design. It uses a subatomic physical phenomenon to protect our lives in the simplest way. It is a useful ghost, a guard that never sleeps, powered by the slow decay of an atom. Hundreds of thousands of lives around the world have been saved by the scream of this tiny ghost. But the atom doesn't just guard our future, it is also the key that unlocks the past. It allows us to listen to the whispers of time. Imagine you're an archaeologist. You find a piece of ancient linen cloth in a dry cave, or a skull in an icy tomb. The biggest question arises, how old is it? What era does it belong to? How do you turn a silent object into a witness of history? The answer comes from another ghost, an isotope that exists all around and inside us. Carbon-14. The story begins in outer space. The Earth's atmosphere is constantly bombarded by cosmic rays. These high-energy rays collide with atoms in the upper atmosphere, creating neutrons. When one of those neutrons strikes a nitrogen-14 atom, it turns that nitrogen atom into a radioactive isotope of carbon, called carbon-14. This carbon-14 then combines with oxygen to form radioactive carbon dioxide. This special CO mixes with the normal CO in the atmosphere. Plants absorb both types of CO through photosynthesis. Animals eat plants, carnivores eat herbivores. As a result, every living organism on Earth, including you and me, has a nearly constant ratio of carbon-14 to carbon-12 in its body, equivalent to the ratio in the atmosphere. As long as we are alive, eating and breathing, we are continuously exchanging carbon with the environment and maintaining this ratio. The clock starts ticking the moment an organism dies, stops eating, breathing, and absorbing new carbon. The stable carbon-12 in its body remains. But the radioactive carbon-14 begins to decay according to a constant law. Every 5,730 years, half of the carbon-14 in a sample will decay back into nitrogen-14. This period is called the half-life. By measuring the remaining ratio of C14 to C12 in an organic sample, scientists can calculate with incredible accuracy how long ago that organism died. It's like a cosmic clock that is automatically wound in every living thing. Death is when the stopwatch is started, and archaeologists, with their complex machines, are simply reading the time that has passed on that clock. Thanks to carbon-14, we know when the Dead Sea Scrolls were written, revealing the earliest pages of the Bible. We know that C, the Iceman, perfectly preserved mummy in the Alps, lived over 5,000 years ago. We can date ancient cave paintings, listening to the stories of vanished civilizations. The atom has become the most objective and accurate historian. The useful ghosts don't stop there. They creep into other corners of modern life without us even knowing. In factories that produce paper, plastic film, or metal sheets, a radiometric thickness gauge is used. A beta-emitting source is placed on one side of the material running on the production line, and a detector is placed on the other. The amount of beta radiation that passes through indicates the exact thickness of the material. If the material is too thick, fewer beta particles get through, and a computer automatically adjusts the rollers. If it's too thin, more beta particles get through, and the computer adjusts accordingly. Everything happens in an instant, ensuring uniform product quality down to the micrometer. Or the next time you're in a movie theater or on a plane, look for the green exit signs that glow in the dark. Many of them don't use electricity or batteries. Inside them are small glass tubes filled with tritium gas, a radioactive isotope of hydrogen. Tritium emits low-energy beta particles. When these particles strike the phosphor coating inside the tube, they cause the powder to glow continuously. A sign like this can self-illuminate for 10 to 20 years without any external power source. A tiny atomic beacon, always ready to show us the way in an emergency. Our world is shaped by these silent atomic applications. They're not giant reactors or complex medical machines. They're small, clever devices created to solve very specific problems. They are proof that we have tamed the atomic fire to the point where we can safely place it in everyday objects. Our journey in this section has gone from a vague fear of an invisible force to the realization that we live in harmony with it. The atom is not just out there, it is in here, in our homes, in our history, in the very products we use. It has become a silent partner, a ghost that has been tamed to serve life. And the whisper in the original script once again echoes with meaning. The atom is right beside you, silent but never absent. It is no longer the monster under the bed, but the guardian on the ceiling. It is no longer the scream of destruction, but the whisper of the past. So look around your room one more time. The smoke detector, the history book on the shelf, the phone with its microchips manufactured with absolute precision. How intricately your life is woven with the world of the atom. Which of these applications surprised you the most? The two faces of the atom, blessing or curse. We have come a long way. We have stood in the light emanating from a nuclear power plant, feeling the warmth of a smokeless fire. We have witnessed the atom become a skilled surgeon, a diligent farmer, a strict engineer, and even a tireless space explorer. We have seen it present in our own homes, a familiar and useful ghost. That journey has equipped us with knowledge. But now, it is time for judgment. It is time to return to our starting point, to the primordial question that prompted us to begin this journey. Let's return to the two iconic images. On one side, the mushroom cloud rising over Hiroshima. On the other, the light bulb shining in a hospital emergency room. Previously, they might have been two separate worlds. But now, we know they were born from the same source of power, the same great discovery, the same physical truth. They are two faces of the same entity. So, which is the true face? After all we have seen, is the atom ultimately a blessing or a curse? To answer, we must bravely look at both. And let's start with the darkest face. Let's start with the scars. This is the argument for a curse. At 8:15 a.m. on August 6, 1945, humanity forever lost its innocence. The bomb with the innocent name Little Boy turned the city of Hiroshima into a hell on earth. The survivors, the Hibaksha, told stories that the human mind refuses to believe are true. They spoke of a second sun exploding in the sky, of human shadows burned and permanently etched onto stone walls, of a black, sticky, radioactive rain pouring down on the city. They spoke of people who were alive one moment and reduced to ash the next, and of those who survived only to carry a slow death within them, an invisible enemy ravaging their bodies from the inside. 3 days later, Nagasaki suffered the same fate. In that moment, warfare changed forever. But more importantly, humanity changed forever. For the first time in history, we held in our hands the ability to destroy ourselves. Not to destroy a city or a nation, but to annihilate our entire civilization, to wipe the human species off the earth. That discovery opened the era of the Cold War. For nearly half a century, the world lived under the shadow of the sword of Damocles. Tens of thousands of nuclear warheads, each hundreds of times more powerful than the Hiroshima bomb, were aimed at major cities. Children in America and the Soviet Union were taught to duck and cover under their desks and drills. A pathetically futile act against the destructive power of thermonuclear weapons. The Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962 pushed the world to the brink of apocalypse. All life on the planet at one point depended on the calm and reason of a few men in a room. We created a mad doctrine called mutually assured destruction. Its logic was, no one would dare to strike first, because the retaliation would mean total annihilation. We built a fragile peace based on the threat of collective suicide. This is a psychological scar that runs deep through generations. The atom sowed a new fear into the collective subconscious of humanity, the fear of immediate and total annihilation. Even when used for peaceful purposes, the ghost of destruction did not let go. Chernobyl in 1986 was not just an industrial accident. It was a warning about human arrogance, a reactor designed with fatal flaws, operated by a system that valued secrecy over safety, created a vast dead zone in the heart of Europe. The Chernobyl exclusion zone remains a horrifying monument to our mistakes, a radioactive wound that will continue to bleed for thousands of years. Fukushima in 2011 was another reminder of humility. It showed that no matter how carefully we calculate, we can still be overwhelmed by the fury of nature. We can build higher walls, more complex safety systems, but we can never be 100% certain. The argument for the curse is clear. The release of atomic energy has given the world weapons of infinite destructive power, spread global fear, created irreparable environmental disasters, and left a toxic legacy for thousands of generations to come. It is the Pandora's box we should have never opened. But that is only one face. Now, let's flip the coin. Let's bravely look at the other face, the face of hope. This is the argument for a blessing. Let's start with the greatest challenge humanity faces in the 21st century: climate change. Our civilization is threatened by the very energy that built it. We face a grim choice: continue burning fossil fuels and face an uncontrollably warming future, or find another path. And on that path, nuclear energy emerges as one of the most powerful solutions. Since its inception, the global nuclear power industry has helped avoid the emission of over 60 gigatons of CO, equivalent to the emissions of the entire global transportation sector for nearly 10 years. Every operating nuclear reactor is a giant artificial lung, providing a huge amount of stable electricity without warming the earth. The choice here is not between a completely safe technology and a dangerous one. The choice is between the manageable risk of a nuclear accident and the unavoidable certainty of a climate catastrophe if we fail to act. Next, let's look at the miracle of life. As we have seen, the atom has given doctors extraordinary tools. Over 40 million nuclear medicine procedures are performed worldwide each year. Tens of millions of cancer patients have been treated with radiotherapy. PET scanners, by making the disease glow, have saved countless lives through early detection. Every sterile surgical instrument, every safe injection, may owe its safety to a beam of gamma rays. When a mother, a father, a child is saved by radiotherapy for their family, the atom is not a curse. It is a grace, a miracle, a hope. And that blessing extends to the fields. In a world with a growing population and degrading land, ensuring food security is a relentless race. Mutation breeding technology has produced thousands of new crop varieties with higher yields, better disease resistance, and greater tolerance to drought and salinity. It is silently feeding millions. Food irradiation technology is helping to reduce waste, ensuring that what we grow reaches the dinner table safely. Finally, let's look up at the stars. The atom has given wings to our infinite curiosity. It is the enduring heart that has sent the Voyager probes beyond our solar system, the fire that warms our robotic explorers on Mars. It allows us to answer the deepest questions about our origins and our place in the universe. The argument for the blessing is also very strong. The atom has given us the tools to fight climate change, cure incurable diseases, feed a hungry world, and explore new frontiers. It is a silent giant, a source of power that has been and continues to improve the lives of billions. So where do we stand? Between the hell of Hiroshima and the miracle of a successful radiotherapy session. Between the obsession with Chernobyl and the hope for a carbon-free planet. The answer perhaps lies in a simple metaphor. One mentioned in the original script, a knife can be used to chop firewood for warmth, or it can be used to kill. The knife has no morality. It is neither good nor bad. It is just a tool. The intent of the person holding the knife determines its purpose. The atom is the same. It is the ultimate tool. The energy released from a fission reaction has no intention. It simply obeys the laws of physics. No one understood this tragedy better than J. Robert Oppenheimer, the father of the atomic bomb. He was a genius who led the Manhattan Project to success. When he witnessed the first successful nuclear test, the Trinity test, he initially felt a sense of scientific pride. But immediately after, a feeling of horror overwhelmed him. He recalled a line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." Oppenheimer lived the rest of his life in torment and regret, tirelessly advocating for the control of nuclear weapons. He embodied this paradox, the brilliant chef who created the sharpest knife, and also the first to realize with horror that it could cause a massacre. And that brings us to the central philosophical conclusion of this entire story. The atom did not choose to be a demon or an angel. Humans did. The debate over nuclear energy, over nuclear weapons, is ultimately not a debate about physics. It is a debate about human nature. The atom is a giant mirror, reflecting everything we are, our transcendent intelligence, but also our foolishness and greed, our extraordinary creativity, but also our terrifying capacity for destruction. We cannot undiscover this, cannot put the genie back in the bottle. We have tasted the forbidden fruit from the tree of knowledge, and we must live with that knowledge forever. The question is not how to eliminate the atom, but how to live with it wisely. And that leads to the final question. A question not for scientists or politicians, but for each of us. Look back at human history, with its wars, its genocides, its mistakes, and its environmental destruction. But also look at Beethoven's symphonies, Da Vinci's paintings, acts of altruism, the footsteps on the moon. Looking at both sides of humanity, do you trust us? Do you believe we are wise enough, mature enough to hold the fire of the gods without burning ourselves? The fire of Prometheus, the dream of a nuclear future. In the last part, we stood in judgment, weighing the two faces of the atom and ultimately looking into human nature itself. We asked ourselves if we were wise enough to hold the fire of the gods. It is a heavy question, shaped by the scars of the past, by Hiroshima, by Chernobyl. But what if the answer lies not in learning to live with the old fire, but in creating a completely new one? In Greek mythology, Prometheus stole fire from Mount Olympus and gave it to mankind. That first fire was wild and dangerous. It warmed caves but also burned down forests, cooked food but also caused deadly conflagrations. The humans did not give up. We learned. We tamed it. From the flickering campfire, we created forges, then steam engines, internal combustion engines, and complex gas turbines. We turned a wild force into the foundation of civilization. Can we do the same with the atomic fire? Can we begin a second nuclear age, an era that learns from all the mistakes and tragedies of the past to create a safer, cleaner, and more efficient future? The answer is yes. The dream is taking shape in laboratories and research centers around the world. It is not science fiction. It is the future being built. The nuclear reactors operating in the world today are mostly Generation 2 and 3. They are reliable workhorses, but they carry the inherent design flaws that led to disasters like Chernobyl and Fukushima. They rely on water for cooling, operate at high pressures, and create radioactive waste that lasts for tens of thousands of years. Scientists and engineers around the world are developing a new generation of reactors, Generation 4, with a design philosophy that puts safety first. One of the most groundbreaking and promising ideas is the molten salt reactor. Forget solid fuel rods and high-pressure water cooling systems. In an MSR, the nuclear fuel is dissolved directly into a molten salt at a very high temperature. This liquid salt mixture is both the fuel and the coolant. This fundamental change solves the inherent problems of older reactors. The biggest problem with traditional reactors is the risk of losing coolant, leading to a core meltdown. An MSR cannot have this type of accident because its fuel is already in a liquid state. More importantly, it is designed with an ingenious passive safety mechanism. At the bottom of the reactor is a plug made of frozen salt. If any incident occurs, such as a total loss of power, the fans cooling this plug will stop working. Salt plug will automatically melt, and the entire molten salt fuel will drain by gravity into a specially designed safe containment tank, where the fission reaction will automatically stop. No human intervention is needed. No backup generators are required. It is inherently safe according to the laws of physics. A Fukushima-style disaster is essentially impossible. Furthermore, MSRs can burn the nuclear waste from older reactors, turning it into energy and leaving behind fission products with much shorter half-lives. They can also use thorium as fuel, an element much more abundant than uranium, which also cannot be used to make nuclear weapons. If Generation 4 reactors are a major evolution, then fusion energy is a complete revolution. All the nuclear technologies we've discussed so far are based on fission-splitting heavy atoms like uranium. But there is another way to release atomic energy, a way that is far more powerful, cleaner, and safer. That is fusion merging light atoms together. This is the very process that is happening in the core of the Sun and billions of other stars in the universe. Under immense pressure and temperature, hydrogen atoms fuse together to form helium, releasing a colossal amount of energy. For decades, recreating this process on Earth has been a distant dream. But that dream is slowly becoming a reality. In the south of France, a coalition of nations from around the world is building one of the most complex machines in history, the International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor, ITER. ITER's goal is to prove the feasibility of creating fusion energy on a large scale. Inside it, IHR scientists will inject a small amount of fuel isotopes of hydrogen called deuterium and tritium into a donut-shaped vacuum chamber. Then, they will heat it to an incredible temperature, over 150 million degrees Celsius. 10 times hotter than the core of the Sun. At this temperature, the fuel becomes a charged cloud called a plasma. To prevent this super-hot plasma from touching and melting the reactor walls, they use one of the world's most powerful superconducting magnet systems to create an invisible magnetic cage. Under that heat and pressure, the nuclei will fuse, releasing energy and neutrons. This energy will be used to boil water and generate electricity, just like other power plants. If successful, fusion energy will change the world forever. Virtually limitless fuel, deuterium can be extracted from seawater, and tritium can be created from lithium, a fairly common metal. It would end our dependence on fossil fuels and the geopolitical conflicts over energy. Inherently safe. A fusion reaction is inherently safe. It is not a chain reaction. If any incident causes the magnetic field to fail, the plasma cloud will immediately cool down, and the reaction will stop. There can be no meltdown or explosion. Clean waste, It produces no greenhouse gases or long-lived radioactive waste. The main byproduct is harmless helium gas. The reactor materials will become activated, but they will become safe after only a few decades to a century. To put it simply, fission is us learning to control a dangerous magical fire. Fusion is us learning to create a miniature star on Earth. The future of the atom lies not only in giant machines, also lies in small flexible devices. Engineers are developing small modular reactors and microreactors. These are compact nuclear power systems that can be mass-produced in a factory, transported by truck, train, or plane, and quickly installed anywhere. Imagine a microreactor the size of a shipping container that could provide enough power for a remote town in the Arctic, a desert mine, or a forward military base for years without refueling. Imagine in a natural disaster, when the national power grid collapses, one could quickly transport such a reactor to provide power for field hospitals and rescue operations. In the more distant future, these compact and efficient fission reactors will be the main power source for the first human bases on the Moon and Mars, providing far more energy than RTGs to run life support systems, vehicles, and laboratories. This is the vision of the nuclear future where we have a diverse energy ecosystem, safe generation for reactors that process their own waste, microreactors providing power to the most remote places, and ultimately clean and limitless energy from artificial stars. This vision is not a guarantee, it is a choice. The fire of Prometheus still needs to be explored and perfected by us. It requires huge investment, international cooperation that transcends political barriers. And most importantly, the courage to overcome the fear of the first nuclear age and to trust in our own ability to build a better future. The previous part asked if we are worthy of the power we have. This part shows us the power we could have. It elevates the choice to a new level. The choice is not just about managing a dangerous past, but about whether we dare to dream and build an extraordinary future. This vision of the future, from tiny nuclear batteries to artificial stars to you, is it science fiction or a realistic path forward? Which nuclear technology do you think is most promising for our future? Absolutely. Here is the rewritten version of the conclusion, adjusted to integrate and reflect the ideas about the future presented in the new Part 7. A question for the sleepless. So, we have reached the end of our journey. Together, we have traveled through a century of the atom, a century of great paradoxes. We began in a quiet room with a question about light, and that very light led us through the darkest corners and to the most brilliant heights of human intellect. We have looked back at the past, stood before the ghosts of Hiroshima and Chernobyl, felt the primordial fear and the price of our mistakes. We have walked through the present, witnessing the atoms silently at work in power plants, hospitals, farms, and in our own homes, an invisible network of destruction, salvation, and enlightenment. And then we dared to look forward. We looked at the fire of Prometheus, dreaming of a second nuclear age, a future of unmeltable molten salt reactors, of abundant thorium fuel, and even the ultimate dream of creating a miniature star on Earth to harness clean, limitless energy from fusion. After having gone through all of that, the past, the present, and the potential future, do we have a final answer? Can we now put the atom in a box, label it good or bad, and put it away? The answer is still no, because this journey was never intended to give you a ready-made answer. It was only meant to equip you with enough to face the truly important questions yourself. Questions that have been reshaped, made deeper and more urgent by the very dreams of the future we just explored. And these are those questions, the final questions for the sleepless. The first question, do you believe nuclear is the key to a green future? Before, this question was a trade-off between a risky existing technology and a certain climate catastrophe. But now, with what we've seen in Part 7, this question takes on a whole new shade. It's no longer just about whether we accept the old reactors of the past. The question now is, do we dare to bet our faith, our money, and our hope on the promise of a new generation of nuclear technology. Do you believe in the dream of fusion energy and the complex ITER machines that could give us the power of the stars? Do you believe in the elegance of molten salt reactors, designs that are passively safe according to the laws of physics? Do you believe that a future powered by thorium or by compact microreactors is a realistic vision? This is a bet on innovation. On one side is the safety of using only the technologies we know well, despite their own limitations. On the other side is a leap of faith in science and engineering, a belief that we can and will create a better, safer, and cleaner atomic fire than the one we've had. Will you choose to stay on the shore, or will you set sail towards a new horizon, full of promise but also of risk? And that leads to the second, more difficult question. Or is it forever a double-edged sword that humanity cannot control? The existence of future technologies like fusion or generation for reactors makes this question more poignant than ever, because it lays bare a harsh truth. The ultimate problem may not be the technology, but us. Imagine one day we truly create a perfect fusion reactor, a star in a bottle that cannot melt down and produces no long-term waste, a pinnacle of scientific achievement. But will that achievement make us any wiser? Because even with the safest technology, the knowledge of how to build an atomic bomb will never disappear. The double-edged sword is still there. Thousands of nuclear warheads still exist. The human element, greed, fear, nationalism, and the capacity for error remains the most unpredictable variable. Can a species that still aims weapons of mass destruction at itself truly be trusted with the secret of creating a star? Does a safer technology make us more responsible, or does it just make us more complacent, more willing to accept new risks we haven't fully anticipated? This question delves deep into your faith in humanity. It forces us to confront whether our moral and social progress can ever keep up with the breakneck pace of our technology. There are no easy answers to these questions. There is no single concluding line that can neatly wrap everything up. We have finished the journey of knowledge, but the personal journey of reflection has just begun for each of us. Let's return to your room. It is still night, still silent, but perhaps now that silence carries a different meaning. You know that in the light illuminating the room, there may be the imprint of a split uranium atom. You know that on the ceiling, a radioactive ghost is watching over you as you sleep. You know that out there in the darkness between the stars, our robotic brethren are being warmed by an atomic heart. You also know that somewhere on this planet, a missile with a nuclear warhead still lies silent in its silo. And now, you know, one more thing. You know that in laboratories across the world, scientists are tirelessly pursuing the dream of a new fire, the dream of a star in a bottle. All of these things are true, all coexisting at once. And this is the final thought I want to leave you with. A whisper to conclude it all. The atom does not sleep, and perhaps neither should we. It does not sleep. The decay of americium in your smoke detector is ongoing. The half-life of carbon-14 in ancient relics is still counting down. The reactors are still generating heat. The nuclear waste is still emitting radiation. Potential energy in the warheads is still there. And in the labs, the dream of a new fire is being kindled every day. And because it does not sleep, perhaps we shouldn't either. Not sleeping doesn't mean losing sleep out of fear. Not sleeping means being aware. It means being vigilant. It means never stop asking questions, not just about the past, but also about the future. It means never accepting simple answers to complex problems. The power of the atom demands constant vigilance from those who create and live with it. We do not have the luxury of being indifferent, not only to the legacies of the past, but also to the great choices of the future. So, stay awake. Keep thinking, because the story of the atom is not over. Through the choices we make today, who will write the next chapters?
You've crossed the story. You felt every pulse in the dark, and I was there with you, quietly, always. That's why I left behind one last thing. Not to explain, not to impress, just to stay with you a little longer. A song I chose with care, as if tucking you in from across time and space. So go on, lay back, the music knows where to take you. still here, then you're something rare. Not many stay this long. So, thank you for choosing to stay. I'm here too, still awake, surrounded by the quiet glow of my editing screen, shaping the next stories just for you. If there's anything you want to leave behind, a whisper, a suggestion, even just a symbol, drop it in the comments. Because maybe, tomorrow night, you'll hear yourself echoed in a story that's never been told before. still here, even now? I have a feeling part of you is still wandering somewhere between wakefulness and dreaming. I know that feeling well because I'm still awake with you. In a quiet room, I'm gently laying out layers of sound, each breath, each beat, preparing the next journey we'll take together. If you're still listening, leave me a sign. Let me know how you're feeling or just where you are in this vast world. Because right now, in this stillness, you are not alone.